Well guys, this was going to happen at some point, and now it's time for it to finally happen. A few months ago, I decided to look at a little cartoon that had come out at the beginning of this year called Has Been Hotel. You've probably never heard of this show. It's very obscure. Only like 2 people know about it, really. I had heard a lot of things about this show. It was very divisive. People either loved it or they hated it. I decided to watch it and make a video on it, and my thoughts on the show were less than stellar, to say the least. I was very much aware of series creator VivziePop's other cartoon, Helluva Boss, and originally I was going to do a double feature of sorts, where I would look at both Has Been Hotel and Helluva Boss in one video, but because I thought Has Been Hotel was that bad, I figured it would only make sense to split the two up into 2 separate videos. As time went on, I was dreading but also weirdly anticipating the day that I would watch Helluva Boss and start work on a video talking about it. I didn't know what I was expecting out of Helluva Boss when I first watched it. Was it going to be better than Has Been Hotel? Was it going to be worse? Was it going to be equally as bad? I didn't know. It could have gone in any way. So recently I decided to watch most of Helluva Boss. I didn't watch every single episode, and I'm probably not going to watch every episode, but I watched most of the show, and that's all that matters. And I'll be damned, maybe VivziePop isn't as talentless as I initially made her out to be. I would like to start this off by saying that Helluva Boss is far from a good show. By no means am I saying that this is a good show, but to my surprise, this is nowhere near as bad as Has Been Hotel was. So the show is meant to be a spin-off of Has Been Hotel. I'm not sure if I can really call it a spin-off, because I brought this up in the Has Been Hotel episode, and I'm gonna bring it up again here. The chronological order for both of these shows is kind of confusing. Has Been Hotel started off as a short pilot that was uploaded to YouTube in October of 2019, and then 1 month later, in November of 2019, the pilot for Helluva Boss would come out. And then in October of 2020, the first proper episode of Helluva Boss would be released. However, the first proper episode of Has Been Hotel would not come out until January of this year. So in other words, Helluva Boss came out before Has Been Hotel, but it also came out after Has Been Hotel. I don't know, it's extremely confusing. For the sake of making things easier, I'm just gonna say that this show came out before Has Been Hotel, completely ignoring the 2019 pilots. The premise of this show is admittedly more interesting to me when compared to Has Been Hotel's premise. The show follows a team of 4 characters, 3 of them demons, 1 of them a wolf. They run an assassination business. Those that are in hell hire these 4 to go up into the living world and assassinate someone for revenge. There's a lot of other details in the plot, but that's basically the gist of it. Again, I think it's a lot more interesting than Has Been Hotel's premise. To be honest, thinking about it more, Has Been Hotel doesn't even have a bad idea behind it. Maybe it could have been a good show, but by God, the execution of it is unbelievably poor. Helluva Boss in comparison, I don't think it's good, but it's not as bad, surprisingly. A lot of the problems that I had with Has Been Hotel, they're either present in Helluva Boss, but to a lesser extent, or they are completely improved in this show. Well, I don't know if I want to say improved, because again, this show technically came out before Has Been Hotel, but still. For starters, you have the art style of the show, which I think is actually really good. The art style of Has Been Hotel isn't bad either, but I do have my problems with it, and these problems are, for the most part, absent in Helluva Boss. For one thing, Helluva Boss has a more varied color scheme when compared to Has Been Hotel. In Has Been Hotel, almost every character has the exact same color scheme: red, white, and black, and that's it. It makes it really hard to tell the characters apart from each other. They all just end up being one big, giant, indistinguishable blob of red, white, and black. 3 of the 4 main characters in Helluva Boss do have the red, white, and black color scheme, but besides that, there's generally a lot more variety in the colors for the character designs. Additionally, when talking about the character designs in Hazbin Hotel, I brought up how every character kind of looks the same. A large majority of the characters have very similar facial structure and very similar expressions. Pointy chins with eating grins. Helluva Boss, in comparison, again has more variety with its character designs. Yes, there are some characters that have the pointy chin and the eating grin, but not as much as in Hazbin Hotel. Going back to what I was saying with the color schemes, the backgrounds in Hazbin Hotel suffer the same problem. They're all just mostly red, and that's it. I understand that this show takes place in hell, but that doesn't mean that it has to be red all around. It's okay to have other colors. If you have everything be red all around, it's not going to look visually appealing. Nothing is going to stand out at all. Everything is going to look exactly the same. The weirdest thing is, even though Helluva Boss takes place in hell as well, that rhymed, I know, there are different colors. Like, there are a variety of colors. You know, you have purple, you have green, you have stuff like that. And it's proof that, like, you can have the show take place in hell, but also give hell other colors besides the obvious red. And then there are frequent moments where the characters go into the living world, and it's like, oh my god, it feels so refreshing to see all these different colors. It might seem like I'm making a big deal out of something so minor, but let me tell you something. When you have an extremely limited color palette in your cartoon, that will affect it. That will make everything look and feel the same. It doesn't matter how unique the personalities of these characters are, they all have the same color scheme, and so it's going to be hard to distinguish them from each other. It's okay to give these characters other colors besides red, white, and black. Even if this show takes place in hell, it's okay to give the backgrounds and locations other colors besides red. The fact that this YouTube cartoon that has a significantly smaller team behind it has a better art style than this much bigger cartoon that's on a major streaming service is just crazy to me. Like, how the is that possible? Seriously, how do you do that? Moving on from that, I think it's time we look at the one big flaw that completely ruined Hazbin Hotel for me, and we'll see if Helluva Boss has it as well. Hazbin Hotel is generally considered a comedy, even though it's not funny. There are no jokes at all. None. Zero jokes in Hazbin Hotel. It's not funny in the slightest, and yet it's classified as a comedy for some reason. You see, serious creator VivziePop has a, how do I put it, very immature style of humor. The only jokes that could be found in Hazbin Hotel is excessive swearing. That is literally it. The characters say the F word a lot. The characters say the B word a lot. And it's meant to be funny. And not once is it ever funny. The problem is not that there's swearing in this show. The problem is that there is too much swearing in this show. And that it's the only source of humor in the entire thing. There's literally no other attempts at comedy in Hazbin Hotel besides the characters say a lot, the characters say a lot, that sort of thing. It is the most unfunny thing I have ever seen in my entire life, and somehow people just eat it up. Somehow people are okay with it. There are people that will look at like Velma or Modern Family Guy or whatever, and they think, yeah, this is garbage, this is unfunny, but then Hazbin Hotel they'll consider comedy gold. Velma and Hazbin Hotel are equally unfunny. There ain't a single funny joke in either of these shows, and yet one is unanimously despised while the other isn't. I don't get it. Well, when it comes to Helluva Boss, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that the excessive swearing is nowhere near as prominent in Helluva Boss as it was in Hazbin Hotel. The bad news is that it's still present in the show, and that it's still not funny, even if it's not as prominent as it was in Has Been Hotel, and that the show in general is just not funny, even if you looked past the excessive swearing. Okay, I will admit something. There is one moment across both of these shows where the swearing is actually kind of funny. One of the characters on this show has the same voice actor as Billy from Billy and Mandy and Invader Zim, and it's like impossible to listen to this character talk without thinking of Zim. And so there's one scene where this character yells out "mother effer," and it actually made me laugh a little bit. I guess it's just the idea of like Invader Zim swearing is funny to me, and that's it. That's the only time the swearing is funny in either of these shows. You know what? The fact that I was able to laugh one time in this show automatically puts it leagues above Has Been Hotel. Has Been Hotel was a f***ing desert wasteland of humor. There were no jokes at all. Helluva Boss at least had one funny moment in it. One funny joke in it. And even then, it wasn't really the joke itself that was funny. It wasn't the swear word itself being uttered that was funny. It was just the idea of like another character that the voice actor for this character voiced swearing that made it funny. The idea of Invader Zim swearing just made me laugh a little bit. It wasn't a massively funny moment or anything like that. It wasn't a laugh out loud gut buster. It was just I let out a small chuckle and that's it. But still, the fact that this show had one funny moment in it is enough to put it far above Has Been Hotel alongside a bunch of other adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. Well done, Helluva Boss. Well done. Have a gold star. In general though, I don't think the show is very funny, but at least it tries a little bit with its comedy, which is more than I can say for Has Been Hotel. With Has Been Hotel, it's like they didn't even try at all with the comedy. It's just unfunny as to sit through. This at least tries a little bit to be funny. This at least tries a little bit to do something, really. They tried to make a good show with this. I guess you could say they tried to make a good show with Has Been Hotel, but I think the execution for Helluva Boss is much better done. I gotta be honest, I could see this being a good show, much more than I could Has Been Hotel. I don't hate this show that much. I don't love it either, but surprisingly, I don't think it's downright terrible like Has Been Hotel was. I think it's extremely mediocre, but given how awful Has Been Hotel is, I'll take extremely mediocre, thank you very much. Some of you could suggest that I shouldn't compare Has Been Hotel and Helluva Boss all that much, and that I should look at Helluva Boss as its own thing separated from Has Been Hotel. But considering how much I f***ing loathe Has Been Hotel, I will inevitably make comparisons to it with this other show that VivziePop made. If I thought that this show was worse than Has Been Hotel, I would be making comparisons. As it stands right now, where I think the show is much better than Has Been Hotel, I'm making comparisons to show why I think this show works a little bit, whereas Has Been Hotel doesn't work at all. And even though I don't think Helluva Boss is as bad as Has Been Hotel, I still would not call it a good show at all. The show is still unfunny, even if the excessive swearing isn't as prominent in this show as it was in Has Been Hotel. Much like Has Been Hotel, Helluva Boss is not 100% a full-on comedy. There are serious, dramatic moments in the show. The good thing is, though, because the humor in Helluva Boss is slightly less bad than in Has Been Hotel, and by that I mean there's not as much excessive swearing in this show, that means I'm able to take these dramatic emotional moments just a little bit more seriously. This was a huge problem that I had with Has Been Hotel. 99% of the show is just extremely unfunny comedy. The characters swear a million times, and I'm supposed to find that funny. And then randomly, out of nowhere, they're like, oh hey, here's a moment that's supposed to be serious. It's supposed to be an emotional moment. Please take this seriously. And I just get tonal whiplash from it, just because, like, it comes out of nowhere. It's so unexpected. There is nothing wrong with blending comedy and drama together. That is perfectly fine. The problem is that the show does an extremely awkward job at doing so, in part because of how bad its comedy is. I brought up in the episode for Has Been Hotel, but a comedy drama can only work if both both the comedy and the drama are good. If one aspect is bad, then by default the other aspect is bad as well, regardless of how it's executed. The poor execution of one aspect completely spoils the good execution of another aspect. There's been a lot of discourse around the show surrounding the abusive relationship between Angel Dust and Valentino. Yes, I actually bothered to remember the characters' names for this, and I hate myself for that. I've seen people say that this show handles this undeniably serious subject matter with the care and delicacy that it deserves, and I've seen other people say that the show does it in a very poor, disrespectful manner. But the thing is, for me personally, I'm not able to take this seriously, regardless of how it's executed. Yes, abusive relationships are a serious matter. They're not jokes or anything like that, but I'm not able to take it seriously for this show, regardless of if it's well executed or not, because of how terrible the humor is. I see this undeniably serious moment and it's like I should take this seriously, but I just can't, because I get reminded that this is the same show that thinks saying the F word and the B word a million times is funny, and that completely ruins any credibility, any chances of me taking this seriously, even though I know I should. I would much rather have a bad adult cartoon just to be a 100% terrible comedy from start to finish, rather than a mostly terrible comedy with a few serious moments sprinkled in. Because then those few serious moments, I'm not going to be able to take them seriously because of how unfunny the show is. Almost every adult cartoon that I've looked at on the search for the worst cartoon has no serious moments or anything like that. There's no emotional, dramatic moments that I'm supposed to take seriously. There's nothing like that in these shows. They're just 100% terrible comedies from start to finish. And to be honest, I would much rather have them be this way, because if these shows attempted to have serious, dramatic moments in them, regardless of how these serious moments are executed, and regardless of the serious subject matters in question, I'm not going to take these moments seriously because of how awful the humor is in these shows. Stuff like Alan Gregory, The Prince, Hoops, none of these shows have serious moments in them at all. They're all just terrible comedies from start to finish, and that's for the better. If any of these three shows attempted to have serious moments in them, I wouldn't be able to take them seriously because of how unfunny they are. All the serious moments would just feel very forced and out of place. It's like they just shoehorned them into the show. And it's like, if I don't find your comedy funny, what makes you think I'm going to take your drama seriously? This is yet another reason as to why I think Has-Been Hotel is worse than a lot of the bad adult cartoons that I've looked at on this series. You can't make an extremely unfunny and immature pee-pee joke and then immediately follow it up with a serious emotional song and expect me to just be okay with it, because I'm not going to be okay with it. You cannot give me this MCU-esque tonal shift and expect me to just be fine with it, for me to just ignore it and move on from it like it's nothing. No, I will notice the abrupt tonal shift, and I will criticize your show for it. And yes, that is actually a thing that happens in Has-Been Hotel. A character makes a really unfunny pee-pee joke, and then it's immediately followed up with a song from Charlie and her girlfriend as they sing about how they'll always be together no matter what. It's supposed to be a cute, sweet, emotional moment, but unfortunately I'm unable to see it that way because of the pee-pee joke that happened only 5 seconds prior to the song. Again, considering the fact that Helluva Boss has slightly less bad humor compared to in Has-Been Hotel, I am able to take these dramatic moments a little bit more seriously, but not by much. The transition going from the comedy to the drama and then back to the comedy still feels extremely awkward. It just doesn't feel like a perfect balance at all. It doesn't just naturally go from comedy to being serious serious. No, it feels off. It just feels abrupt. I genuinely do believe that both of these shows would have been significantly better if they weren't comedies at all, because it's clear that VivziePop is not good at comedy at all. If these shows were just straight up 100% dramas, then maybe they would have been better. Because again, regardless of how you feel about the dramatic, serious moments in this show, the one thing's for sure, even if you think they're poorly executed, they are nowhere near as poorly executed as the comedy, if you can even call it that. Again, at least they try a little bit with the serious moments. They don't even try at all with the humor. VivziePop is not good at comedy. VivziePop is not funny at all. And that's normal. Sometimes there are just some genres that they're not meant for you. Someone could be good at making action movies, but then they could be bad at making romantic comedies. Someone could be good at making comedies, but then they could be bad at making horror movies. VivziePop is good at making drama. Or at the very least, she's better at doing it than comedy, that's for sure. And I do think that both of these shows would have benefited greatly from not being comedies at all. Because I'm sorry, but saying f*** a billion times is not funny. All that's gonna do is turn me away from whatever serious emotional moments there are in your shows. I'm not gonna take them seriously even though I should. And truth be told, I fail to see how making both of these shows into straight up dramas would be a bad thing. Almost every single adult cartoon is a comedy in some way, shape, or form. There are little to no adult cartoons out there that aren't comedies. Even something like BoJack Horseman is still primarily a comedy, even if it does tackle darker, more serious themes when compared to other adult cartoons. VivziePop could have done something revolutionary with these two shows. She could have shown that you don't need to rely on vulgarity or constant swearing or anything like that in order to convey that the cartoon you're making is for adults and not for kids. Instead, she chooses to do the complete opposite and relies solely on excessive swearing for comedy. It just feels like a desperate way to convey that yes, Has-Been Hotel is not a show for kids, it's a show for adults. Even though there is not a single adult out there, there is not a single grown adult that would look at Has-Been Hotel and find it funny. If a grown adult watches Has-Been Hotel, they're gonna find it unfunny and immature because a lot of the humor is just, oh haha, they say the F word a lot, and that's it. In contrast, some immature 7-year-old could find the show funny because they say the no-no words a lot, and that's funny to them because they're immature. I gotta be honest, it feels like there's a lot less for me to say about Helluva Boss when compared to Has-Been Hotel. Not only is Helluva Boss nowhere near as bad as Has-Been Hotel, but also there's just the realization I have now that like criticizing VivziePop is pointless. Working on this video has made me realize how different of a feeling it is to make a search for the worst cartoon on an ongoing series that's still getting new episodes, compared to a search for the worst cartoon on a short-lived one-season cartoon from over 10 years ago. Because on the rare occasions that I look at an ongoing cartoon on this series, I just think to myself that like, okay, this is getting another season, I can only hope it's better. There's just that 50-50 chance that like season 2 will either be better than season 1 or it will be the same quality as season 1. It will end up being the same crap. And unfortunately, more often than not, these shows end up going the latter route. They end up just being the exact same thing as season 1. And I don't see why Has-Been Hotel will be any different from this, except for the fact that VivziePop is a prominent person online. Velma, for example, is made by a giant corporation, and so as a result of that, anything I say about season 2 of Velma and how it could be better than season 1 and whatever, it's not going to matter to them. They're not going to take it in because they're a corporation. They're not going to listen to this one random individual. Has-Been Hotel, in comparison though, is made by a much smaller team. The creator of the show, VivziePop, VivziePop is a lot more prominent on the internet, and only now do I realize that it's kind of pointless to criticize her. And what I mean by that is, she's not gonna change. What do you think are the chances that she's gonna come across the 2 videos that I've made on her shows and she's gonna think, oh, you know what, this guy has a point, maybe I'll improve the quality of my shows? That's just not gonna happen at all. I could criticize the excessive swearing in both of these shows all I want, I could go say that they are unfunny a million times, but that's not gonna do anything at all. VivziePop is not going to watch these videos, acknowledge my criticism, take note of my criticism, and apply them to any of her future seasons for these shows. VivziePop doesn't know who I am. I don't exist to VivziePop. I'm just one random stranger on the internet who just so happens to not like her work. And no matter how many times I criticize the flaws in her shows, she is not going to take in that criticism. She is going to keep making these shows the way that she's been making them because she has a fan base that doesn't care at all. I don't think there's going to be any Has-Been Hotel or Helluva Boss fan that's going to have their minds changed by watching my 2 videos on these shows. No one is going to watch my Has-Been Hotel episode and think, oh, you know what, I used to love this show, but now I think it's garbage. Nothing like that at all. They're going to continue to like Has-Been Hotel despite the many flaws that it has. And they're going to continue liking Has-Been Hotel whenever we get season 2, season 3, season 4, etc., even though they are most likely going to have the same flaws that season 1 has. It just makes me realize now how f***ing redundant it is to criticize VivziePop at this point. She's not going to change the quality of her work, and there's nothing that I or any of us could do about that. VivziePop doesn't care. Her fans don't care. Why should I care, honestly? VivziePop will continue to make these shows the way that she's been making them, and her fans will continue to eat them up. And then it just makes me question, what will people think of these shows in the nearby future? What legacies will these shows have? What will be their future? I strongly believe that both of these shows, especially Has-Been Hotel, will be seen as poorly aged and unfunny in the future. There are of course a good amount of people that already hate both of these shows, but as the years go by, there will be more and more people that think, wow, these shows are terrible, and a lot of those people are going to be former fans. I genuinely believe that in the nearby future, both of these shows, especially Has-Been Hotel, will go through what Rick and Morty once went through. Rick and Morty used to be the biggest show in the entire world. Everyone knew Rick and Morty, everyone loved Rick and Morty. You go outside, you would see people wearing Rick and Morty shirts. You go online, you would see people joking about Pickle Rick and Mr. Meeseeks and whatever. It was everywhere. Everyone knew and loved Rick and Morty. It was a massive part of pop culture in the late 2010s. And then as time went on, interest in the show slowly started to decrease to the point where the show was now seen as a joke. What was once considered the best modern day cartoon was now considered a laughingstock by most people. And there are a lot of reasons as to why the show's reputation did a complete 180. The cringy nature of the show's fan base, the allegations against serious co-creator Justin Roiland, and the belief that people started to have that Rick and Morty was never funny to begin with. All of a sudden, Rick and Morty was no longer seen as a cool or funny show. If you said that you liked Rick and Morty, you would be ridiculed just like that by the same people that praised the show just a couple of years prior. This isn't regular seasonal rot or anything like that. This isn't like with The Simpsons or SpongeBob or Family Guy. No, because those shows are still beloved even if they are nowhere near as good as they used to be. They still generally have good reputations. They still have a place in pop culture nowadays, which I cannot say the same for Rick and Morty. I don't see anyone talk about Rick and Morty anymore. I don't see anyone acknowledge its existence. Whenever a new episode drops, I don't see anyone talk about it online. It's just like poof. It's like the show never existed to begin with. Any critical acclaim that Rick and Morty once had, any pop culture relevance that Rick and Morty once had, it's now completely disappeared, like it never even happened. And on the rare occasions where I see people talk about Rick and Morty nowadays, it's almost always in a negative light. Nobody likes this show anymore. It used to be the biggest show in the entire world, and now it is considered a laughingstock by the internet. While we're on the subject of once beloved cartoons that are now unanimously ridiculed on the internet, you also have The Loud House. The Loud House premiered in early 2016, and almost immediately everyone in the animation community loved it. People were hailing it as a return to form for Nickelodeon, the show that will save Nickelodeon after a slump that they were going through in the early to mid 2010s. This show made people optimistic for the future of Nickelodeon. It made them think that like, oh, things are gonna get better for them. We were gonna start getting more and more good Nicktoons now because of this show. Unfortunately for them though, that would end up not happening at all. Instead of ushering in a new golden age for Nickelodeon, The Loud House would just go and do the complete opposite, instead becoming a new cash cow for Nickelodeon to milk alongside SpongeBob. Any Nicktoon that would come out post Loud House, regardless of its quality, regardless of how good it was, it would end up being largely ignored by Nickelodeon, simply because it wasn't raking in the same amount of success that SpongeBob and The Loud House were raking in. I've yet to watch it, but I've heard a lot of things about how Rise of the TMNT is this really great show. It's like this underrated gem of a Nicktoon, and it ended up doing poorly for Nickelodeon. They ended up dismissing it and ignoring it simply because it wasn't SpongeBob or The Loud House. Much like Rick and Morty, The Loud House would also end up having a very problematic creator, which for sure hindered the show's reputation. And the fan base. Dear God, the fan base. Again, much like Rick and Morty, The Loud House's fanbase would garner a reputation, an even worse one than Rick and Morty's fanbase, if you can believe it. You see, The Loud House is a show about an 11-year-old boy who has to live with 10 sisters. All of these characters are minors. They are all underage. I think you get where this is going. The fanbase of this show would put out some of the most disgusting, up stuff you could possibly think of. Stuff that like I don't even feel comfortable going into too much detail about because it is genuinely that gross. And that would lead to The Loud House becoming a laughingstock on the internet. Nowadays, I see more hate for the show than love. And again, much like with Rick and Morty, this isn't a seasonal rot situation either. I don't see people say that The Loud House used to be good, but now it's bad. No, I see people say that The Loud House was never good to begin with. All of those videos that cartoon YouTubers would make back in 2016 about how The Loud House would be the show that will save Nickelodeon, they've aged like milk. They are poorly aged. I would actually say that all of those videos aged like milk the moment they dropped, considering the fact that it is near damn impossible to save something that was irredeemable from the start like Nickelodeon. But I digress, okay? It was 2016. It was a completely different time. We didn't know any better. It's crazy looking at both of these shows and the horrible reputations they have nowadays, and just thinking that just a few years ago, these shows were beloved. People loved these shows. People thought they were great shows. And now they have become jokes. They have become laughingstocks all over the internet. Back in the late 2010s, Rick and Morty and The Loud House were two of the most beloved cartoons within the animation community. Nowadays, if you even dare to say that you like Rick and Morty or The Loud House, people will either call you a cringy Redditor or Jeffrey Epstein, or both, assuming God forbid you like both shows. I don't see people say that these shows used to be good, but now they're bad. No, I see people say that they were never good to begin with. Whether you personally agree with this take or not, it doesn't really matter. It has become the popular opinion either way, and there's nothing you can really do about that. This is going to inevitably happen with Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss, especially Has-Been Hotel. 4 to 5 years from now, people will look back at Has-Been Hotel and think, how did we find this garbage funny? How did we like this? Why were we praising this show? Has-Been Hotel is already a very divisive show, as mentioned before. People either love it or they hate it. But sooner or later, the hate will grow more and more for the show. This show will be more unanimously disliked. And to a lesser extent, I could see the same thing happening for Helluva Boss. I don't think that Helluva Boss is as bad as Has Been Hotel, but I could very easily see it going down the same route where it's like, oh, it's not good anymore. It was never good to begin with. This negative re-evaluation, I could see it happening to Helluva Boss, even if it's not as bad as Has Been Hotel, simply because of its connection, of its association to Has Been Hotel. This inevitable belief that people will have that Has Been Hotel was never good to begin with, a little bit of that is going to leak onto Helluva Boss. It will affect Helluva Boss in some way. Even if it's to a lesser extent, it will still be affected simply because of its association to Has Been Hotel. I've seen a lot of people say that indie animation is going to become the future. You know, between these two shows and like a bunch of other stuff like the Amazing Digital Circus and whatever, I see people say that like indie animation will become the future. And you know what? That's fine. I'm not against that at all. I'm not against indie animation becoming the norm, because when you look at how things are for the big corporations, when you look at how things are for Nickelodeon, Warner Bros., Disney, you know, like, it's understandable. It makes sense as to why someone would think that indie animation will and should become the norm. I'm not against indie animation becoming the norm. I'm not against supporting indie animation. But I don't think that these two shows should be considered the gold standard for indie animation. I don't think that VivziePop should be the face of indie animation. I know that indie animation is capable of so much, and I don't want its reputation to be ruined by a god-awful cartoon and its significantly better but still mediocre spin-off. I'm disappointed with both of these shows, you know? Like, I see good ideas in them. I think maybe they could work out, but they're just so badly executed. It's the humor. The humor drags both of these shows down. Again, if neither of these shows were comedies, maybe I would respect them a lot more. I genuinely believe that going the extreme route is the better option here. Instead of improving the comedy, they just ditch the comedy completely. Have both of these shows be pure dramas, and that's it. Because any of the serious emotional moments that are in these two shows, I'm not able to take them seriously because of how unfunny they are. I get reminded of the style of humor that these shows have, and that completely ruins any credibility that these serious moments have. And even if you think that the serious moments in Has Been Hotel and Helluva Boss are poorly executed, even if you think that VivziePop isn't good at doing drama, she is for sure much better at drama than she is at comedy. There's no denying that at all. You could say that her attempts at drama are poor, but like, when it comes to her attempts at comedy, it's like, good God, this is the unfunniest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe this needs to be said, but sometimes indie stuff can be bad as well. It's not even just indie animation, you know, indie movies, indie music, indie games, they can be bad as well. Just because Has Been Hotel is not some big corporate Disney thing, it doesn't automatically mean it's good. Something can be indie, but it can also be bad as well, despite that fact. I do think that Helluva Boss is a much better cartoon than Has Been Hotel, and as it stands, it is one of the better cartoons that I've looked at on the search for the worst cartoon, but it's still nowhere near as good as its reputation suggests. I do think that this show could be a lot better, mainly when it comes to its comedy, because yes, this show doesn't rely on excessive swearing like Has Been Hotel, but the show is just still generally unfunny. There are interesting ideas in this show, and I want to engage with these interesting ideas more. I want to see what VivziePop is truly capable of, but her foul attempt at comedy, her absolute black hole of humor, prevents me from doing that. I am unable to take either of these shows seriously because of how unfunny they are. Any serious dramatic moments they have, I'm unable to take them seriously. Anytime someone says that these two shows are the future of animation, indie animation, adult animation, just animation in general, I'm not able to take it seriously because I get reminded of the humor that's in these two shows, and I know that they can be a lot better. Again, I'm not hating on these shows because popular thing bad. I'm hating on them because I don't think they're very well executed. They have interesting ideas in them. Helluva Boss especially, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of things that I like about Helluva Boss. I don't think it's a terrible cartoon, but I do think it could be a lot better. I don't think either of these shows should ever be acknowledged whenever people bring up, support indie animation and whatever. Like, no, I will support indie animation that's actually good. Neither of these shows are good. I'm sure there are tons of obscure gems deep within the corners of indie animation. Amazing shows that get no attention at all, and yet these two shows get millions and millions of fans, lots of attention, stuff like that. Sometimes things aren't fair like that, Sometimes they aren't fair. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Adios.